going to use Excel just here to create a scatter plot, a trend line, and then talk about what that graph and that trend line give us. So first, if you're using Excel with this, you're going to need to have your data. So in column A and column B, you see we have 12 days and then the 12 temperatures that go with that. We're going to just see if there's a relationship between these in any way. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and highlight those two sets of data. And then I'll go to Insert. You can either do recommended charts, or if you know you want a scatter plot, you can go ahead and just hit, I want a scatter plot. So we see here, the x-axis shows our days, the y-axis shows temperature. Feel free to throw in axis titles. I always think it's important to label your axes. If you're in my class, I will take points off if you do not, because how am I supposed to know what your graph is about? I don't know about you all, but I struggle spelling when it's sideways. Okay, so I've got my axes, and now the big thing that we want to do is create a trend line. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this plus sign, and you can see I can add data labels, I can add error bars, a legend, or a trend line. So I'm going to click on trend line. And if you want, you can get rid of all kinds of things. So you can play with everything in here. I like the grid lines because I like to be able to see a little bit easier if I'm, looking at the y-axis. Anyway, trend line's on there. Now, if I want to play with the trend line, I double click on the trend line. So I had my cursor here, and that brings up the format trend line over here on the right. Now you can see linear is marked because we do have, in fact, a linear line here. And I want to go down toward the bottom where it says set intercept. Don't worry about that. But I want to display the equation and display r squared. As we know, r squared leads us to r, which then leads us to, do we have correlation, right? Is there a relationship? So from there, we can see the equation y equals 0.6643x plus 76.682. So we know that our slope tells us there is an increase in temperature by 0.6643 degrees for every day, right? We're talking about change in y over change in x. And then our y-intercept tells us, like, on day 0, that would have been our temperature. Now, to find the correlation, we know that r squared is great, but we need r. So I'm going to say equals. If you want to find the square root in Excel, we would type SQRT, square root. Then in parentheses, put the number that you care about, 0.7172, close your parentheses, and hit enter. So my r value, so this is r equals 0.846877. So that means our r value gives us a strong positive correlation. So that means that we do have a relationship. A strong positive correlation shows a relationship between the days and the temperature for this particular set of data. So it's all a matter of just clicking on these different pieces. You can go ahead and, change your graph a little bit if you want it to be different colors, so there's style. You can come over here and look at your fill options, your shadow. There are so many different things that you can do in Excel. So I just gave you the basics on terms of axis labels, adding in the trend line, finding the equation and the r squared, knowing that r squared leads to r by taking the square root, which allows us to give a recommendation on the correlation, whether it's positive, negative, strong, weak, all of those. So that's Excel, linear models, trend lines, and correlation.